I didn't have a job and a life where I was being perceived all the time in that way.
Right.
So it wasn't the sense of being just among women, and just that wasn't, I didn't have the same feeling of freedom there at all. What I was like, oh my goodness, I'm this small gremlin type person in giant pants for some reason. And then and I already was like, I'm a hobbit surrounded by elves.
I love, as I was shutting the curtains, hearing you be like, ah, yes, what gave you permission to
Think about me when you're touching yourself.
Because I just had someone tell me quite frankly how many times they thought of me while doing that.
So that happened while we were setting up this podcast.
Well, that person has told me that, but not right now. But it was another person that told me that recently. And I was like, bold. Thanks. Cool.
Was this in the context of just a general hangout? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where, like, I don't judge someone for saying that, but it's more of a, like, I'm not sure what he was communicating by telling me that. It was very much that, where I just was like, oh, well, that is certainly information that I now know.
Did it have like a confession vibe, like a absolution seeking?
I don't know if it was like a admission of I think you're hot and therefore we should do things vibe, but it didn't go that route. That's not how it landed. But that is what I hypothesized potentially. I assume the best of people and assume that if someone has said something, like I've discovered in the politics of the last year, that I assume that if someone has said something just completely asinine, they probably didn't know it was asinine or harmful. And we can have a conversation about, like, I genuinely assume the best. If someone has said something that is maybe misinformed, including myself, like, I assume that that person had good intent and they just were maybe missing information. We can talk about the missing information. I feel that in our neurospicy community, we do generally assume the best of each other, and maybe it's because we're used to being misunderstood.
Yes.
But we assume that if something has gone sideways, that it probably didn't have malintent, and so it's like, oh, let me help you out, friend.
Which is sometimes untrue.
Yes.
It takes me, I'm quicker than I used to be, but it still does take me a little stagger step to realize when somebody's just being an asshole and I should just give up.
Yeah.
I ain't got time for it.
Yeah.
But speaking of perception, I feel like we'd be doing this episode a disservice if you and me, Jess, didn't talk about how we met and that whole. Can I do it first?
I love Jess's face so much. Go for it.
The way I remember it is as follows. So it's my first few weeks in New York, and my new friend Molly Crabapple is having a party at her amazing loft downtown.
I'm so excited. I'm putting on more lip gloss. Go on.
Oh, I mean, I was excited. I'd put on lip gloss, but also I was in a very self-conscious, physically self-conscious time of my life. I struggled with eating disorders as a younger person, and I was in a recovery phase, but I was just not feeling great about things.
Yeah.
And I was suddenly in this community of people who were, in a femme way, incredibly sexy people, at these loft parties, and it was very, very glamorous, and I was very new to this scene, and it was an underwear party. That's what I remember.
That is like also upper echelon, like because in the back of my mind I was like, oh yeah, I totally forget that people who aren't from LA and New York also don't know that, one, most people are very attractive in both of those cities, and a lot of people are also on cocaine. And so, like, there's a lot of very slender, very attractive people, some genetically, some cocaine.
It started as like a private life drawing for femme artists, and I was invited like at Molly's apartment. No way you were getting in there if you weren't a femme or the one dude who was serving drinks.
The one photographer guy.
Yeah. Actually, there weren't even photographers allowed at first.
I think I came to a later one of those where it was more like, I think it was realized that people just quite liked a safer space to hang out in underwear.
Yeah, it ended
just
up with
in a
like
different way.
everyone was just sort of chatting and not really interested in drawing. And there was this sense of like freedom that we were all just in our underwear together. Beautiful underwear, of course. You know, we all pulled out the best we had. And that kind of like partially nude chaos is what Laurie found themselves in.
Yes, and I wasn't like uncomfortable in that I was told that underwear was optional, but I sort of wanted to show willing when I got there, and I was like, you know what, I'll stay dressed, and then I was like, you know, I should, and then I had like giant Marks and Spencer's underpants on, like giant Marks and Spencer's pants, and also lingerie. Side note: if there is a company that makes proper lingerie for non-binary bodies,
I know exactly the one.
oh, can they sponsor us?
I would love to. I'll ping Chelsea. I always mispronounce her brand, but it's Cantiq, and I want to call it Cantique, but I think it's like Shantique. Like I think it has like a fancier pronunciation.
Fantastic.
But yeah,
Like
we will link them
Shantique?
in the show notes because they are wonderful. So you've encountered Jess at a really, really lovely
I've encountered. I mean, the room was full of
lingerie
like,
soiree.
beautiful, beautiful women in lingerie.
Yes,
and everybody's being really friendly. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get in my underpants and show that, you know, I just want to be part of the mix. And so I go into the bathroom. I get into my underwear, and I come out. And I'm like, I guess this is okay. This is fine. And I think partly because now hearing how it was for you, I didn't have a job in a life where I was being perceived all the time in that way.
right.
So it wasn't the sense of being just among women, and just that wasn't, I didn't have the same feeling of freedom there at all. What I was like, oh my goodness, I'm this small gremlin type person in giant pants for some reason. And then and I already was like, I'm a hobbit surrounded by elves. I had a bad body dysmorphia year anyway. And then Molly, lovely Molly, and you, Jess, and Jenna Sowers, who's a fashion model. They're all in beautiful lingerie. And that somebody was taking a picture. They were like, Laurie, come and be in the picture with us. And I was like, I'm good. I'm okay. I'm gonna go hide in the bathroom now and have a little panic attack. And then a few days later, because I was writing like my first big feminist book, I asked Moles if she could put me and Jess in touch. And so I was like, this would be a great person to interview. And thank goodness you were clear and straightforward, Jess, because the email I got back said something like, that would be great, you know, respect your work, but you know, I noticed that at that party we were at, you were uncomfortable to have your picture taken with me. And I understand that, you know, as you have this feminist reputation, and you know, I work in pornography, you might not want that. And you know, but you know,
oh no, and it was because of the giant pants.
Yeah, I was like, oh god, I wasn't even thinking about that. I just didn't really want my picture taken in between you and Jenna Sowers in my giant pants. Like, I just had to. But it must have looked like I'd sort of stormed off in outrage at all these beautiful harlots that were draped all over the room.
Half the room was literal harlots, half of it was artists, and half of it was journalists. And I can't tell you which people are the overlaps there.
Because suddenly when you see something from the other side.
Yes.
Because my experience growing up was not like yours, Jess. And I don't know about yours, Pam, in that way. Like, I was a very late developer. And also, like, just a sort of, I just wore a lot of sacks and was quite eating disordered and generally a bit smelly, I think. And like,
I was also smelly. I was smelly on purpose.
Oh no.
I thought if the men got too close, then they would smell me and be like, ew. But actually, they would sometimes go, ooh. And then I would go, we might have a good time.
Whatever it is, it's going to be, I've learned in my time that whatever it is, it's going to be somebody's thing.
Oh yeah, anytime I think I'm being extremely unappealing, it appeals to someone.
Actually, I have learned not to deliberately try to not flirt, because when I'm trying not to flirt, I come across very strange. When I try and put people at their ease, when I
Is it a bit
deliberately
uncanny valley?
no, when I deliberately
Do you feel relaxed
do you feel
now?
relaxed? No, when I deliberately try to put when I try to put people at their ease, I come across as aggressively flirting, which is amazing.
Oh my God. Okay. I did not develop early. I developed when I was about 14. So essentially, I looked like a child for a really long time. And then I looked like a child with a hormone problem because I had a very, very young baby looking face. And I still, to this day, for whatever reason, get perceived as kind of whatever age people ascribe to me, which is really curious. But I essentially wore a gray hoodie for a really long time because I was 5 feet tall, and there was a halcyon period of 3 weeks in which I was a 34C, and that was great. And then it passed, and then I kept being like, "That was enough. That was enough. We can put him back. That was enough." And like, so I didn't really know what to do with giant boobs being also child-sized and having a child face. So it was a very confusing time, and a very confusing time for also people perceiving me. Mainly, I appealed to what I would best describe as the unfortunate demographic of older men who verge on the like, is that an adult that I'm attracted to ? So that was a yike. And especially when I opened my mouth and started talking and they realized that I've had this personality since I was like 8 years old. Yet again, a weird melange of either confusion or Reddit awkward boner subthread. And so I wasn't quite sure how to perform femininity for quite a while because I was just like, people appeared to perceive me in ways that are confusing and not like my peers that appeared to be, I wouldn't say normal developing, but it was later in development. Like, quite frankly, a lot of my other peers were taller than me and had already started going through secondary puberty. I also very short. And so like I just looked like a little kid. But then, like I said, I just all of a sudden looked like a little kid smuggling honeydews. I was like, what do I do with this? However, I did learn, as well illustrated, like if I wore something that showed my figure, I got one kind of weird attention. But if I wore like kind of the sackcloth thing, I got a whole other kind of weird attention. And so like no matter what I did, like people paid attention to me, and it's very difficult for me to figure out a way to make people just absolutely not pay attention to me. And I still to this day don't know why, and wish I could like capture it so that I could turn it on or off.
That would be amazing.
It would be so cool because for whatever reason, I'll just be minding my own business. Like literally when I'm going on my long walks in the hills, I am just like in my own, and especially now that I think about it, it does seem to happen when I am most concerned with my own inner world, and I'm quite literally just existing, but being the fullest me existing because I'm engaged in my existence, that people are like, oh, hi. Yeah, that was my experience of that is like, and Laurie, speaking, I guess, to your point, for a long time, same thing where I think people thought I was standoffish because in LA, I was often surrounded by like models, the children of models, extremely tall, glamorous people that did not share my body type. And they'd be like, let's grab a photo. And I'm like, no, I would prefer not to do that. And it's not because I was hideous by any means. Like that's the thing is looking back, I was really, and yeah, I'm like, oh, I was so cute, but I was very cute and they were very sexy. And so it was very much like kid sister Stacy vibes. And so I didn't really know how to perform sexy correctly because I did look literally like a child for a very long time.
Which is how I felt in porn because I never got the boobs. Someone once described my breasts as nipples with confidence, and I was like, that's actually pretty accurate. And most of the people in porn are short. So I was feeling like this flat-chested giant stomping through, because also the PR woman wouldn't let us wear flat shoes in public. So I'm like, you know, my instinct was to like wear flats and be on the same head level as everyone. But no, I had to put on the stilts. And so I'm just like God Hora, stomping through the Tokyo of the porn convention like a beanpole.
'Tis
And,
I, bold nipples.
Yeah. Just don't call them brave or I'll cover them up.
So brave.
So brave. So brave. Oh my God. And Jess, I was thinking about this when you were talking about performance. I was thinking about how I didn't really know how to perform what like sexy was. And that in a way I actually wanted to take like burlesque classes or something because I'm like, I feel like I missed the memo on this. I feel like the things that like people perform as sexy, I'm unsure of how to do correctly. But like, so along the end of my parents' bed, there was Good Housekeeping, Architectural Digest, Ham Radio Manuals, Playboy.
Okay.
Everything changed when Ham Radio Digest attacked.
Exactly. And it was because I guess when Playboy started, my aunt, my dad's sister, had gotten him a subscription for the articles. Like quite literally, his sister was like, "Oh, I hear that there's
They
great
were pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
When I wrote for Playboy, my mom demanded to know what issue and went to the newsstand. I was like, "Mom, I'll send you a copy." And she's like, "No, I want to go buy this myself."
Yes.
And she went to the newsstand and she proudly announced, "I need to purchase a copy of Playboy because my daughter has a byline in it." And I was like, the weirdest things make her proud. It's so hard to make her proud. And then the weirdest things, she's like, "My daughter wrote for Playboy." And I'm like, okay, I guess
like,
the articles
cool.
really are that good.
So Jess, what I was attempting at some point to recursive back to you, which also does weirdly relate to my mom, because the messages of femininity I got from my mom is very, very, very bright, and my mom and my dad had the exact same job. So both of my parents are DAs. They in fact got each other's interoffice mail because their last name is one letter different, and their birthdays are 364 days apart. It's kind of great.
Wow.
But like, so they had the exact same thing. And my mom frequently was the sort that would complain about her oily skin so makeup doesn't stay on it, and her hair is straight and flat. Now what can you do with it? And so in a way, like, signaled that she didn't perform femininity in the ways that were expected. Like, she always had short hair, very much the pantsuits. Like, she does have like a color palette she enjoys, but like, I didn't learn about how to perform femininity at all from my mom, because my mom had low key, and I, I respect this. She was like, "I don't do this well, so I'm just gonna kind of give up at that, and I'm gonna focus on this other stuff." And she was real good at the other stuff. So like, I didn't get any of the like, this is how you dress for a man. It was just like,
oh goodness, I didn't.
It was more just like, are you wearing clothes? Like, and so then, like, when I encountered Playboy, I saw this extremely curated part of femininity. And I remember explaining to one of my neighbors, this sweet boy named Dustin, because he then would go into my parents' room to like sneak looks at the Playboys. And I was like, "Oh, by the way, women's bodies don't usually look like that. Here's how they make them look like that." And he was appalled. But I was like, well, I've seen naked women occasionally, because like I'm raised as a girl and around a lot of women people that occasionally in dressing rooms take off their clothes, and that's not what it looks like. And so I was like, oh, I know that this is an art and a performance. I just don't know how to do it. And then, like, actually witnessing other porn yet again didn't really relate to any of it. And then someone showed me your hysterical literature clip, and I was like, oh, this person's enjoying themselves. And it was the first time I saw myself reflected back in someone doing a sexy thing. And I was like, what? And I made, yeah.
So Clayton Cubitt, who was the artist who made that series,
Sage.
also a friend of Molly's that I met at one of Molly's parties, but it was a clothed party, but I still might have been in my underwear. So Clayton was invited to the YouTube headquarters in New York to give a talk with this other artist who'd done black and white work. I think it was about sun damage. And the moderator at one point said, "What made you choose to feature a actress like Margaret Cho? Because, real women don't giggle like that." And I was so hungover, I might have still been drunk. I was also probably stoned, and I'm wearing this like blush mink fur
Hell yeah.
and like a shitty black t-shirt and leather leggings. And I'm reclined on the couch with Clayton's partner, and we're observing. And I shoot my hand up and I go, "Define real woman."
God, that would come
Weird way to propose, but I accept.
It is very, and that comes into like that reads so differently now. That idea of define. Also, that's just that's so badass. A word British people should never say. But it's like now you get a lot of people yelling, "Oh, what is a real woman?" And they know exactly what answer they want,
Right.
and it's always from a very concerned troll, very antagonist turf, or just straight up misogynist.
I always, by the
POV.
way, every time I hear the word turf, I feel like they're villains in the Smurfs. Just so
They
you know,
might be.
that's
Smurf
what
and
runs
turf.
through my head every time. So antagonistic turf, I was like, ooh, like Gargamel?
Mhm.
Like every time.
But there is this idea, and this is something I ran into reading second wave feminism very young, which
Yeah.
I deeply value second wave feminism. There's a lot of very, very important thinking and philosophy in it. But
It got us here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep. And there
Yeah.
is an idea that performance can only ever be for the male gaze, and that and there is a real femphobia there as well. And but there was really, when I grew up, there was just a real divide between girls and femme people who were considered hot or considered pretty and people who were not.
Right.
And I spent well, not a year, like 9 months in hospital with eating disorders as a kid, and that was the first bit of my eyes opening to that, because I'd been one of those people, and I'm not proud of it, but at school I'd been very much like, well, I'm clever, so it doesn't matter. And I don't think I thought out loud to myself, I'm better than you. But if somebody had told me it, which of course I desperately wanted them to, I might not have said that's not the case.
Right.
And then suddenly I found myself in hospital with people with very different life experiences. Some people had been models and dancers. And I realized that we were all struggling with the same thing.
Right.
And they had got there for different reasons. And that the sense of enmity and the sort of horror of how you were perceived and how you can control it and how you can't is all from the same root. And but that first year I spent in New York was the first time I had friends who had had an experience like that, who were well and who were not, very unwell teenagers like I was at that previous time. And it was very, like, I remember talking with Molly and talking with a bunch of people about that very early experience of being looked at and not being able to control it, and not being able to not being allowed boundaries. It seems like what it boils down to in some ways, not being allowed, like people feeling like they have a sense of ownership over you because they can look at you. But there is, in some second wave feminist philosophy, there is an idea that it's impossible to sort of reclaim that performance, that perception in any way. The only way out of it is to not be perceived and to not do feminine gender in some way.
Right. I think about that of like, because that was what stood out to me about Jess's clip, was that like when I was shown that, I'd had a guy like say to me at one point, we were doing sexy things, and he said, "Why are you smiling?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, am I not supposed to be enjoying this?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said it like that, which, needless to say, apparently ruined the mood.
Oh, your boner can't take a little honesty. How sad. You want to cry about it and use your tears as lubricant as you jerk off in the corner all alone.
While you're secretly
yeah.
thinking about me that you'll confess 20 years later. Wee! I realize now that I filter for people who appreciate the giggles and the smiles and all of those things, whether or not it's, quote, what you're supposed to be doing at the time. Because I'm kind of like, well, like you said, you're just like, this is just me. This isn't a performance of me. This is as me as it gets. The other part of me is a bit uncanny valley and makes people feel weird. It's like when I try to gauge the right amount of eye contact, and apparently my options are looking all over the room, staring into your soul.
Yes.
There is no in between, especially for the light-eyed among us, apparently. It's like when I'm making eye contact, it looks like this. You look horrified.
I just always look horrified.
That is
I have weird eyes, which I guess, other people tend to describe as unique or something. They change color based on lighting and what colors are near me, and also contain many of the colors at any given point. They're like a nice little mixture, like an impressionist painting by someone who wanted to be really colorful.
Your fanciful eyeballs.
Yeah. So not only is there like the internal, like I don't particularly want to engage in eye contact because it interrupts my thinking speed, slows me down. But also, if I make eye contact with someone in broad daylight, they're going to be struck by my eyes.
But that's really funny what you said about hair. I saw TikTok about the concept of celebrity hair, that you have to keep your hair consistent if you want. Like the whole theory was to gain fame, to keep your hair consistent until you are famous, and then you can change your hair. But your hair has to be a very distinctive style that you keep it that way.
Yeah, it has to be just the same style.
Yeah, yeah. And so like it was a theory about, actually they applied it to like Chappell Roan, that her music's been amazing this whole time, but then she went for the big red curly hair and kept it that way until like people were like, oh, that's Chappell Roan. And now she's allowed to do different hairstyles.
Basic signifiers.
Yes.
I've been thinking about the idea of being provocative, which is in the Neuroprovocateurs sense, because it's one of the things I've been called a lot in my time as a writer and like a political journalist and general person in the semi-public eye. And like, I don't write a lot, very much at all, about my personal life and about my sex life. I'm open about being polyamorous, or have been open about that, but I haven't like made a focus of the work. And I'm often told, or it's often assumed, that I kind of set out to make people feel a way. That's what it means. Like I will have I saw there was an event I was speaking at, and somebody asked, "Is this bio all right that we've written for you?" And it's like, Laurie Penny, famously provocative. And I'm like, that. I hate it more than anything. I hate it more than anything because it's also just, it's untrue. It feels untrue. It feels like saying that I set out to produce a reaction, which often I just didn't.
Oh, so is the part of it feeling untrue, is ascribement a word? Ascription?
Ascription.
It like when someone basically ascribes an intent to you, what would you call that? Because it sounds like what's incorrect is that they're planting an intention in your behavior when you do not have that intention in your behavior.
Yeah. Assuming that because you feel a way, that person has made you feel a way.
Right.
And I get it. But if I was able to, if I actually had the capacity to choose how I made people feel with a kind of precise performance, I don't think I'd choose this exact one. It might be quite similar, maybe. And I guess it's sort of flattering that people think I'm doing any of this on purpose.
You're so brave.
I'm so brave. Oh my God.
The bravery.
Have you both heard that? It's
like, and it's so jarring because it's like, I'm literally just existing and doing things I find interesting. And you're putting this like bravery as though I should be afraid.
Yes.
Of just being a person in the world as myself.
It deeply confuses me in that way because I'm like, what's the alternative? Like kind of like the George Carlin meme of like, I guess I'll just die. Like I'm kind of like, what? Like I'm like, what else am I supposed to be doing? Like very similar vibe of that people think that sometimes my manner of dress or behavior is provocative, and I'm like, no, I apparently just missed the memo on provocation, or it's like
Yes.
it's very, I'm just like, no, like just like you said, Jess, it's like I'm just existing over here. Apparently my manner of existence is a thing, and it's like the perception of others of just like, wow, so eccentric, so brave.
I think
Yeah.
maybe some people find it effortless is maybe perhaps the wrong word, but some people find it so just natural and intuitive to ignore certain social norms that are stupid and take a lot of work. And and also just are very non-obvious, at least to
That
me.
part, like I'll sometimes check in about things if it's a non-obvious one, because especially if I, if I'm going somewhere where it's like I don't want to defocus the attention, say on like someone's birthday or wedding or like something like that, like I'll kind of check in about things so that I make sure that I'm not doing the thing where I'm accidentally drawing attention to myself by like existing.
You know, the one set of friends of mine that got married, they wanted everyone to just be themselves. They were like, yeah, be your weird self. Shine on, you crazy diamond. By the way, there's a quiet room in case someone needs to get away.
I love
And
it.
that,
The gasp we just gasped.
I want to have
for
a
those
wedding
who
now.
know, that tells you a lot about their circle.
I don't know what both of your experiences are with this, but it feels often like, well, my experience is that people think that the thing I am presenting is an elaborate mask. You met me, so that's, yeah, it's very silly. Like, you've seen me wandering around the house, like being this, but also being a big dork.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes I'm like, oh no, I'm actually trying to cover the thing that you think I'm elaborately creating for you.
Yes, exactly. I'm trying to, and when you said, Jessica, when you said like the wedding, your wedding, you described people were people saying, just come along and be yourself. Like, I've just learned to hesitate when people say that to me.
I'm like, how much of that did you want?
Are you sure? Because are you sure you're sure?
You know what you're signing up for?
Yeah. And
I love efficiency. So I take people at their word and it
yeah.
sorts them out very quickly.
True.
Yeah.
It's a great litmus test.
Yeah.
That's a very good piece of advice. But I'm a person who can be taken at their word. And it would sure be nice if other people were.
Yeah, I think we talked about that last time, where
We
it's
did.
like if I'm saying or doing something, there's very little subtext and there's not a lot of planning. It's mainly just this is what you see is pretty much what you get.
Yep.
And so being perceived otherwise feels confusing.
Yes. And I'm only just learning how, like, the extent of that in my life and over the years. Like, how many people have just assumed that this is some kind of elaborate game. And it's often easier to see in relationships that continue a little while when people are expecting the mask to drop at some point. I'm like, no, well, underneath that, there is another side, which is what people get to see when they hang out with me, and I'm not sort of being social, but it's not a secret. It's just me arranging my little treasures and being quiet and needing a lot of time by myself, which isn't. It's not a lie. It's just the other bit of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the corollary to that, it's taken me a while to learn to recognize disrespect.
Oh.
And I'm still not very good at it. And the one of the reasons for the disrespect that I often receive is the sense that I'm being disrespectful. I'm being disrespectful to some kind of, well, to the invisible gender norms and the codes of polite behavior, and that therefore I am a person who is in some sense asked for whatever, disrespectful treatment.
What you're touching on is also something that we talked about before, interestingly, in my brain at least, interestingly. I don't know why my brain works this way, but that it's like a mismatch of expectations.
Oh,
because
yes.
It's like, if
there's a link.
Yes, that was where my brain went, is that it's like if you're expecting one thing and then you get another, that can be bad. But if you're not expecting something and you get whatever the thing is, there's not as much friction there.
I think that's so true. It's I I talk about this a lot, but it's why I keep my hair short and red, because I found that when I have more quote unquote normal hair, normal style, then people are expecting something very different when I inevitably behave a bit strangely. But if you turn up looking a bit like a weird clown, and then people are not surprised when you act like a weird clown.
People are like, yes, I can parse the weird clownness of this all.
So I suppose that is actually that's the part that is slight artifice. It's the part that is, it's the frame I put round the crack in the wall.
Got it.
Well, I mean, it might be a little bit mean to talk about it. My basic personality is the crack
Yeah,
in the wall.
I was just like,
but,
oh,
yeah.
buddy.
Yeah.
It's
But,
the frame you put around the delightful yet atypical square of lace done by a beautiful angel artisan in heaven, but that does still confuzzle vast swaths of people.
Thank you, darling.
Oh.
But or crack in the wall.
I like the confuzzling angel lace. That's delightful.
But it is it's very, also I like cutting and coloring my own hair now. It's become a calming thing. But like I do, like the parts that I can control are aspects of presentation, aspects of the way I look, aspects of, well, basically that's it. It's like aspects of slight aesthetic choices, and sometimes I've sort of over focused on that because the rest I really don't feel I can control very much.
Right.
Have tried. All I can do is sometimes make it look intentional. Sometimes. And it's very hit and miss how people receive that, because sometimes it seems more polished and adult when you make it look more intentional, but sometimes then it also backfires because people assume that whatever they don't like about this was done on purpose, and you could fix it, but you choose not to. I don't know about you, but when I want to be by myself, it's often because I don't want to be, it's not just not wanting to be perceived, it's wanting to be looked at. There's the classic John Berger book, Ways of Seeing, and he has the line, men look at women and women look at themselves being looked at. There is this like a double perception, in a sense, when you have a sense of being perceived,
right,
that kind of thing can make me a lot more anxious. But I think that's because I feel like when people look at me, they'll misunderstand. But when I write to people, then that's honest.
I'm curious about Jess's thoughts as I would say perhaps the most professionally perceived.
Yes.
Professionally perceived is a really good word for it, because unlike Paris Hilton, the original influencer, like I'm not really part of that track. But I'm also not, it's not like I was an actress, or like the porn of it all was even really the main thrust, right? Most of the interviews I did, because they couldn't talk directly about porn in the early days on the mainstream media, it was very personality first.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then what are your thoughts on porn? What's your commentary on porn, right? So around 13, I started being perceived by men in a way that they felt the need to inform me of. Now,
That's what we were talking about.
I often walked places with a book in my hands, looking halfway at the words and looking halfway for obstacles that I might trip over. Like, it would have been so easy to just perceive, observe, put it in your memory bank, walk away. I would have remained completely oblivious, but no, they needed me to know.
Yeah.
And by the time I was 18, I was like, you know what? There's this whole industry where I can be perceived in a way that I directly benefit from and have some control over.
Yep.
In some way, I'm consenting to. And that was actually, as much as when I first started, people were like, why are you here? And I'm like, orgasms. Who doesn't love orgasms, right? The control over the act of being perceived, or the control over the act of perception in some way, was a big part of the appeal for me. Then, kind of wrestled with when I went into mainstream porn, I kind of wrestled with the main director and the PR woman over how I was being presented and therefore likely to be perceived. That tension caused an energy that seemed to work really well for the product and the brand. But then the second half of my career was really about, building more control over my presentation and therefore, the ways I'm likely to be perceived. And once I'd gotten so far as to co-found my second company, I was like, I don't actually want to be on camera anymore. I've exerted all the control I'm going to get to exert. And people take work I pour my heart and soul into and stick it on a tube site with like hot wife gets dick down by BBC. And I'm like, that's not what I put there. And this is now boring to me. And once I was bored, then I had no interest in giving a sexual performance, right? I might have been interested in having the same kind of sex with the same people, but it wasn't interesting to do it on camera anymore.
It reminds me, what you said reminds me, I was rereading some Emma Goldman essays, and she talks about sex work. She's so good. In the 1910s in New York, she goes out there and I'm gonna pick up a client, and whoever she picks up first is like, I just think this might not be for you. Like,
the strip club I auditioned to told me that, and I was just stubborn.
Oh,
that was actually a few of my friends had done sugaring, and so I was like, oh, I'm just curious about this. And I talked to one guy, and he actually said he's just like, no, I actually feel bad. And I was like, why? He's like, you're clearly smarter and more talented than I am.
oh no!
And I was like, well, wouldn't that make you all the more apt to give me money then, so I could like foster that intelligence and talent? And he was like, no, that's not. Oh dear. And it was like this amazing like. Anyway, it went very sideways, but very much that where he was like, oh no, I have and it went back to perception, because basically he was like, yes, boobs and hair, correct. And then we started interacting, and he was like, oh no, I'm actually intimidated, and that's the opposite of what I usually get from these interactions, and I don't know what to do with this at all. He's like, you're too smart for this. I was like, no, but I'm also 22 and female, so I need money.
But like what Goldman says is, she says that the some of the anger, particularly from other women towards female sex workers, is about the idea that it's asking for money or asking for any kind of reward for something that it's felt that you owe to somebody for free. Like, you're asking for money for what should be done for free. She's specifically talking about like full service in-person sex work.
Right.
The audacity of it.
The audacity of asking to be paid for what should be given for free. And that I thought about that when you talked about, well, I am being perceived in this way, like you as a younger person, let me control it and let me actually get rewarded for it, do it professionally. And that being seen as in somehow violating an unspoken social norm, somehow violating the code.
Yeah, like why would someone be entitled to perceiving you or interacting with you for free, whether it's something you've put effort into or not?
And they do talk about in a lot of feminist theory, they talk about like the male gaze or the gaze as a form of ownership, which I mean, which would track with like both of your experiences with people not just looking at you, but telling you that they're looking. They want you to know that they can see you.
Yes.
They want you to like not even react, but they want you to to feel
Well,
it.
Laurie, do you remember in early core when we went on like very early 2020 lockdown, we went for a walk on Sunset Boulevard and it was deserted except for a guy across the street who was just screaming his head off at us, and we were dressed
Yes.
in jammies.
We were dressed in pajamas.
And we just started, I remember just laughing because I'm like, what are you trying to do, bud?
What are you going to do?
What's the end game?
People.
I am terrible at being famous.
Jess is like, I'm spiraling.
No, a long time ago, the main director for Digital Playground, I had one movie out, and there was an award show, and he got drunk and he started speaking a little too freely, and he was like, "Why are you selling the way that you do?" And one, rude, but two, you're not supposed to tell the contract girls that they're financially viable. That's just a tactical mistake and a business front. And I was like, I don't know, man. And he's like, no, it doesn't make any sense. Like, we haven't even promoted you yet. You have one movie. You should not be. And I was like, I don't. And the whole time I was with Digital Playground, they were like, could you get a manicure? Would you be interested in a breast augmentation? Perhaps you wear more than eyeliner and mascara to public appearances. And I just, the whole time I was like, my hair's short, it's getting longer, it's real long, I'm making it red, I'm cutting it off, dyeing it black again, now it's my normal brown, oh look, gray's coming in, short, long, medium, etc. And I just did
like
everything
your look,
wrong.
your distinction was not doing those things, perhaps.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, that was like the time that someone asked me to be in their band, and apparently what they actually wanted was someone to wear a corset and stand by a keyboard.
Yeah.
And I was like,
that's not being in a band.
No, that's not what I'm gonna do. Though I have been in several bands sitting on the floor playing the glockenspiel. That was great. I will do that.
That sounds much more Pam.
Yes.
Yeah. To be clear, when it comes to performing femininity, I have a spreadsheet of my
Sorry, go on.
press-on manicures and my lingerie. The shoes wear out a lot faster, so I don't need a spreadsheet to track them. But I own 172 different press-on manicures.
What?
You know what a press-on manicure? It's little nails.
Didn't realize you kept them.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
really?
use stickers.
Huh. Cool.
Yeah, and I have them all organized in a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet, it has columns for primary color, secondary color, accent color.
What?
Oh no, sorry, that's the lingerie. The nails, color, pattern, shape, length, texture. Does it have pearls? Does it have crystals? Does it have metal? Is there a theme? And whether it's for fingers and toes, how good the fit is, and then the manufacturer, and whether they've been photographed yet or not.
Oh my God.
I'm so hype. I am like frozen
my mom
with
would
excitement.
be proud of this. I think my mom would be proud of this spreadsheet.
Yes.
She would be like, well, the nails, whatever, but good organization, honey.
Wow.
Possibly the most erotic thing you've made, to me at least.
I love that the reaction is like, of course Jess is successful. She gets great joy out of reading things with orgasms and makes spreadsheets. This is completely obvious.
That's the key to porn stardom.
But also the idea, I'm coming back to that, real women don't giggle. Margaret Cho is an actress thing. I mean, I'm kind of known for being quite giggly. It's a way that I interact with the world. But also God, it's so sad. The idea that assuming that any joy is a performance for somebody else.
Yes, or that if you're enjoying something, it means that you don't have any substance. And I'm like, what?
Because I've had the similar experience. Like sexually, I've often been told like, wow, it's kind of amazing how you seem to enjoy this so much. I'm like, what was I not supposed to? She's like, yeah, you make all these sounds. You're smiling and laughing. I'm like, that's not like
that those usually are signifiers I'm enjoying
yeah.
things. What were you thinking I was going to react like? And then I'm like horrified because I'm like, are other people not enjoying this? Which then I'm like, what are you doing with the other people?
I think there is a lot of
and like, ugh.
I think there's a lot of letting sex, like assuming that sex is a thing that gets done to you, even if it's enjoyable, consensual, and wanted.
Right.
That's my understanding, at least. That's what I assume. Actually, Jess would probably. You're more of a therapist in this way.
Coach.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So part of it is, yes, there's absolutely a perception that for femme people or people who are read as femme, sex is a thing that gets done to you.
Mm-hmm.
It is especially told to girls. Sex is described in a way that sends a strong message that girls are supposed to be passive, women are supposed to be passive. But there's also this like concern of other people hearing.
Yes.
That serves as like a repressive mechanism, and also sometimes a concern of being taken to be a slut in a bad way if too much enjoyment is shown.
That last bit is something that's mind-blowing to me. Just like actually enjoying sex you're already having makes you sluttier.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
How dare enjoy clearly doing it wrong.
God. Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've noticed a lot of men are very quiet. And when I ask them about it, they're like, oh, well, when I started jerking off, it was like in the college dorm or something.
Of course,
so I had to learn how to be really like, shh. And I'm like, that's your only setting. You're just set to full on quiet mode. Okay. Like we'll make an agreement. If there's a problem, you'll verbalize that and I'll just do what I'm doing, presuming you're enjoying yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Upon reflection, I feel really good about my selection of partners, I would say, as I've gotten older, because I think I have self-selected also for a fellow of the neurospicy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it increases communication. It increases also, people feeling freer to signal their enjoyment verbally or non-verbally.
Yep.
And so that's been really great. And there was an encounter I had with someone recently where I did notice that physically they were responding slightly differently and they'd gotten a bit quiet. And I asked him, I was just like, what I said in the moment was, did the intrusive thoughts win?
Oh.
And he was like, how did you know? Oh. And we had a good laugh about it. And then we were like, let's just, like snuggle and kissy and look at dumb memes and like, do stuff. And then he was like, ooh, I want to do something too. I was like, ooh, how fun. And it's like, we got back into the swing of it. But it was really interesting that what happened was I basically witnessed someone think themselves out of the mode, then shame themselves for think themselves out of the mode. It just looked like he was low-key slightly spiraling. And when I told him that, he was just like, that was accurate. But he's like, but I didn't mean it. I was like, no, I take no offense. Your brain goblins are not a reflection on me at all. So it was a very it was one of those interactions that was whatever the spiritual opposite was of the guy that was like, why are you smiling? Why are you laughing? How dare you enjoy this?
This is like, I read about someone recently who, and when I say I read about someone recently, I may have done this recently, who left someone tied to a bed and then got distracted.
Oh, you actually forgot as opposed to pretend forgot.
Yeah, if it says pretend forgotten, then there's actually. I just sort of got in a bit of a loop in the bathroom.
I love this. This is iconic actually for when clients ask me, how might my ADHD affect my sex life? And I'm like,
how many positions can you try in the space of 5 minutes?
Do you have enough object permanence to realize that your partner is in fact tied to a piece of furniture?
I
I
get bored of foreplay.
Did the big light ahead of you, the one on the ceiling, did it distract you? How about the noise of the air conditioner? What about the way the sheet feels against your elbow?
I have a boyfriend, partner human who also has ADHD. And every once in a while, we'll just start having a conversation. And it like might have started with something about the sex, but then it goes all the way like over. We're like, huh, we were having sex. And now we're sitting here talking. This is fine. Like, not
There
like
have
dog in the
been-
burning house fine, but like actually adequate fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that has happened many a time where like occasionally I'll have to remind both him and I what we're doing, because especially if he thinks of an idea mid smooch, I can feel it because the ends of his lip curl upward while my lips are against his lips. And then I'm like, tell me the inside thoughts. What were they? What were they?
inside-
Like-
The dangerous bit for me is role play.
oh
Like,
no.
if role play happens, there has to be consistent world building because otherwise I get distracted. I'm like, I just don't think we've thought through the economy of this particular, scenario.
What's the lore?
What's the lore here? Which is very fun, but then I can get distracted.
Speaking
Yes,
of
Jen.
lore,
Speaking of lore, is that, oh yeah, we meant to talk about the lore of how we know one another.
Oh.
I met Laurie on Twitter, and we were nice Twitter friends for a while, and then Laurie turned up at a party of one of my friends in LA, and I basically turned to you and went, "Internet," which was really smooth and a great way to make friends.
Pointing at each other and saying, Internet. Oh, yes,
Internet.
Pam from Internet.
Internet.
Gosh,
Internet.
aren't you shorter than I thought you'd be?
That was exactly, both of us were like, "Woo, yay!
Why not?
Hobbit friend." So like, we're like, "Oh, this is clearly going real well." And then just similarly, I was just like, "Gosh, I admire so much of the work that Jess does. I would love to chat with her for my podcast." And my producer was just like, "Cool, let me figure out an email address for her." And I was like, "Great, it's on our website." And we started chatting, and immediately started chatting about our mutual crush on Nadia from Pussy Riot, because, oh my God, Nadia from Pussy Riot. And then it was around hour 3 that you just yelled friendship at me.
The neurodivergent way of making friends.
friendship.
Yes, and similarly, I
Friendship.
was kind of like slightly taken aback, like Laurie was taken aback when I yelled internet, and you were like, no, that was friendly, that was good, it wasn't aggressive, I'm excited.
I'm like, now that aggressive thing I just did, it wasn't aggressive on the inside.
Yes.
That's what really matters.
It was deeply cute aggression. And I was thinking about that. I was just like, what a great way to become deeply bonded to two different humans, is like that it genuinely has nothing to do with, like, I mean, perceiving you both is delightful.
Thank you.
But like, it had nothing to do with the perception or the performance of personhood, aside from me being like, oh, your writing is neat, we're friends now. Your writing and your art is neat, we're friends now. Like, it was very much just like, the innards, they're aligned. Any parting thoughts? Laurie's out of parting thoughts.
No, it's been like, it's a dream getting to chat with both of you about all this. So thank you so much for both being involved. And I really look forward to the next one.
It does me big happies.
Bye.
Rest well.
Take care. Good night, Jess. It's very late where you
Good
are.
night.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Neuroprovocateurs. Please join us on Substack, where you can find exclusive clips, resources, and community of the neurospicy variety. We are an independent podcast, so know that your support on Substack and beyond means the world to us, quite literally. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to leave us 5 stars and glowing reviews, and follow our podcast on your preferred podcast platform so that you can be sure to get each episode the moment it drops, and know that your reviews help us get in front of other people who might also want to listen to this podcast. We are on social media in all of the usual places as Neuroprovocateurs. Thank you again, and excited to see you for our next episode.